Welcome everybody to the fifth AGS Weekly Dialogue. In this series, we get to know better our members and their change-making initiative in a question and answer format. In the first 20 minutes, I'll have a chat with our guests and ask them some questions, and in the next 20 minutes, we'll open to the floor and let anyone present ask our guests any questions that they may have. The first two segments will be recorded for those who are unable to be with us here today. The last segment, 20 minutes with chat with GM, where anyone can ask Vincent any questions that they may have or raise ideas or feedback to him directly. This segment will not be recorded. So now let's get started. Our guest for today is Michael. Michael is an applied drama practitioner and educator. He has a fervent belief in the power of theatre for empowerment, social change, and personal development. He is an experienced facilitator and artist educator. He's worked with diverse populations such as young children, people with special needs, married couples, people with HIV, people at risk, and seniors. He also serves as artistic director of Tapestry Playback Theatre, a local company that bases its work on an applied theatre method called playback theatre. Thank you, Michael, for agreeing to be our guest today. Michael, you've been a member of AGS for almost 2 years now, and also part of the AGS community for a longer time, and many people know you by now. But there are still some people who, like me, don't really know you, and through today's session, I'd like to give them an opportunity to do so. So for a start, can you tell us what is applied drama? How do you advocate for its practical use?
Hi, Daniel, thank you. Well, you began with a really challenging question. Terms like applied drama and applied theatre are not, well, they're quite new. They're only terms that really came up in the 1990s. So even today, there is still some confusion about what they mean and what's the difference between applied drama and applied theatre. So I'll try to shed some light on it. If we look at theatre on a spectrum, on one end you have theatre for art's sake. You watch a play for entertainment. You're part of the audience, and you're really just sitting there and you're just taking in all the experience. On the other end of the spectrum, the audience is more of a participant. You're not just passively receiving the experience, you are also co-creating the experience. So it might be that you are engaging in drama activities. It might be that you're watching an interactive play where there is quite a lot of to and fro between what's on stage and what's off stage. And on that other end of the spectrum, sometimes the division between what is stage and what is audience, it's also a little bit blurred. So the work that I do, I think it's mostly, well, sometimes I do applied theatre where it's an interactive performance, and sometimes I do what I call applied drama, which is basically journeying with a group of participants using certain drama activities for social change, to explore specific topics, and even for personal development. So the idea, I think another difference is on one end, it might be you watch a play for entertainment. On the other end, where it's applied drama activities are used to provoke change, to shape change, and the space in which it's held it might also be different. It's not necessarily a theater; it could be any classroom. So I have known over the years that this kind of explanations is nowhere near enough, but I think it'll do as a start for now.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, theater is what goes on in a play. People watch it, or people can even take part of it, such as in an interactive play. Whereas drama is a skill that can be applied to other aspects of life. Would that be correct?
Well, not quite. Well, so there's theater and there is applied theater, and then there is applied drama. Okay. So theater is named, from the Greek word for the space. Right, so you go to the theater, you watch the space. The root word for drama is actually to do and to act. So there is another difference. In applied drama, the participants do. The participants are acting, taking action. Whereas in the theater, it's they go to a space to watch. But when it comes to applied theater, meaning that you are applying the theater method for change, to provoke change, and also there are elements of interaction. So applied drama then is somewhat like applied theater, but not in the theater. Something like that. I know it's confusing. I haven't found a good way to explain it. I guess the best way would be to have an applied drama workshop and invite people to come along and check it out for themselves.
Certainly, that would be a good way to explain it. But can you give an example of what do you mean?
Sure. So, you go on to PTX and you get a ticket. You go to the Esplanade. You watch a performance. Right. It might be socially engaged performance. It might be about specific social topics, but you're basically still passively sitting and taking an experience. So that's on one end of the spectrum. In applied theater, you come to the theater and you watch maybe, for example, something specific called forum theater. And on stage, you will see a short play. And the play has many problems. It might be about relationships between neighbors. It might be about relationships between races. It presents you a play where there are many problems. There will be a facilitator who will invite the audience to come onto stage and to try to solve the problem by taking on one of the roles, right? So the idea isn't really to find the perfect solution, but to really engage the audience in trying to make sense of the situation. What are the pros and cons of particular options and choices and behaviors, and to build group wisdom, right? So that's one form of applied theater, forum theater, and there are many others like playback theater. Then there is applied drama. You're not exactly buying a ticket. We might be in a classroom. We might be a group of students and a facilitator trying to explore bullying in the school. And we will go through several drama activities, one of which might be, for example, hot seating, which is an activity that is commonly used in rehearsal to understand the character. So if we do it in the classroom, I might ask one of the students to be on the hot seat. He'll sit there as the person who's being bullied, or maybe even the bully. And the rest of us will take some time to ask questions, right? So that's one particular way of finding different perspectives, of getting people to take in different perspectives, of embodying those perspectives, and through that, again, using group wisdom to find possible solutions. But that's just one particular activity in, let's say, a 1 hour or 2 hour long applied drama project. There will be a flow, there will be a sequence of warming up people to the topic, getting them to be more playful, and then getting them into various activities where they might take on certain roles, and they'll find solutions, or they'll explore and understand the topic a little bit more as those characters. And then we'll find, at the end, some kind of reflective activity. But all of these activities in the applied drama workshop, it has its roots in the theater, but it's used for a different purpose now.
So such activity sounds all damn fun.
Yeah. I think fun is it's crucial. We start off life by being curious, by looking for stimulation, and fun and play relaxes people, right? Otherwise, we tend to hold on to a very specific mirror or mask. So every workshop will start with play, because that's to get people relaxed. That's to get them to drop whatever they're coming with, and to be able to work with another to explore sometimes contentious topics. We need to meet ourselves at a more innocent, or a more a base where we can feel it's okay. So I think play and fun is really important and crucial for every workshop.
I agree with you. So if I understand correctly, such workshops are also very helpful in creating empathy, because it allows people to put themselves in the shoes of other people in different situations, so that the issue can be discussed more in depth by the group after they've already put themselves in those shoes. Would that be correct?
Yes, for sure. I think it's a different level of empathy. Certain issues, if I give you all the facts, somebody will recognize it rationally and connectively. but some of the activities really bring you to a certain space. And then we asked you, well, if you were this person, what's the way out now? What can we, together with all our various experiences from life, at this moment, what are options?
Fantastic. Okay, so how do you apply theater to social change?
Well, I think the key is that social change begins with the individual. And the individual is actually not really just an individual. We are one part of a particular group. We are one part of a particular society or country or culture. But we start with the individual. So, in applied drama, it might be that we have a specific topic that we want to explore. Well, let me give a more concrete example. So now I'm in the midst of a festival of playback performances around the world. And it was to show solidarity for the situation in Ukraine with our friends and colleagues in the Ukraine playback community. But at the same time, right now we're to the last week of the festival. We've had, I think, 20 over or 30 performances already. The stories that are coming up are really interesting. We find ourselves as individuals and as members of a particular group reflecting on what this means to us. So, a war that's happening in Europe is not so close to some of us. Of course, things are more expensive, and the news is filled with all of these horrible situations. But in some ways, it's not close to many of us. And yet, at the same time, it is close to somebody who is in Korea or Japan, right? So these performances are international by nature. You have many people in the audience who are from different parts of the world. And we kind of notice, like, for example, the Japanese, because of their history, that there is this aversion to war. There is also this sense of, what can I do? Because, they have been the aggressor before. At the same time, they have also been oppressed before. So the war over there in this particular situation has led us to think about our own situation and what we can do. So another example, an audience from Korea or Taiwan, this could very well, in a whole different world, happen to them because of the geographical situation they are in. So then this makes them think about, if it was me, what would I do? Is there really a right or wrong? Is there really a justification to war? If it happens, what can we do? If it happens, what is the first thing that I might do? Is it my own community? Can I travel out? One of the earliest stories that came out was that in the first few days, people in Ukraine were going to the ATM and drawing out their money, right? Because they were getting ready to leave. If somebody in Singapore, it's like, okay, I go to the ATM, I take out the money, where am I going to go? It's a whole different situation. So with applied drama, this is what happens. We start with empathy, but at the same time, we use inevitably, we connect it with our own individual circumstance, and we start to imagine and wonder what we might do if we were in that situation. So if the basic act of empathizing and embodying allows us to put ourselves in situations that we may never think about. If I was a bully, there are some parts of me that has not been heard. Putting me in a role play or a kind of activity where I can say something about my life can be quite empowering, can even be insightful about why I am doing the things that I do. Somebody who's being bullied in a applied drama workshop, we might get role plays of, what can you do? Even just changing your body posture, even just looking up, even just, saying no like this. Maybe the person who the victim has never imagined the possibility of doing this, but because others are saying, yes, actually that works. We are building group wisdom. We are learning from one another, because we live in one situation, but the whole world is made up of so many different situations. So the idea of group wisdom, it's quite crucial again in in any applied drama context, we are building group wisdom so that the individual can progress. And as the individual progresses and learns more about people, about situations, we have the potential to make change. And just like AGS, as many individuals come together to make change, groups change, cultures change, nations change.
Thank you, Michael. So I'd like to ask you a bit more about this solidarity activity you did, the one involving the Ukraine playback theater. For yourself, what is one thing that you learned from this process so far?
Oh, it's quite hard to think of just one. I guess the most positive thing that came up is that many people can come together to make this happen. It began just as an idea. We reached out to different people. If you imagine organizing a festival, right, you got to think about organizing, administration, publicity, tickets, but everybody just came together and did their own bits and pieces to make this a whole. Those who could did their own publicity, those who could make use of their own images, those who could spread the news to their own communities. And within a matter of weeks, we had a festival of, I think, 36, 37 performances. So I think it was the fact that if there is a call to action and people are feeling this, and I'm sure many people also kind of, either did favors or they know somebody who asked them to, just the act of asking, just the act of, hey, will you help me? We were able to put this together. So I think that one thing that I really learned was that sometimes just doing it and finding help along the way and being willing to ask can create miracles.
I love that very much, because it's something I see in AGS all the time. We see various members having this idea, no idea how to get it done, but just voicing it out, just suggesting the idea, and somebody chimes in and say, hey, I can do this, and the person chimes in, I can do this, and suddenly we've got such a wonderful thing going. It's so amazing.
And as you're saying that, right, I think what might be helpful to us at AGS is the difference is with that community in playback, we have a common language. We already know what method we're going to use, right? So it's just the various tasks, who's going to do what. We know how we're doing it. We know what are the voices we're seeking, so on and so forth. So at AGS, perhaps, the common language is not quite there yet, because we are also good at our own individual areas with our own expertise and skills. But that common bond or language is still a little bit difficult. It's still very concretely like, hey, I need some sponsorship here, anybody can help. Hey, I need a space here, anybody can help, which is great, right? But sometimes that's so specific that it's very hard for the others who don't have those offers to contribute, right? Whereas like a festival, everybody knows what's going to happen. Okay, I'll do that part and I'll do that part. So I think there's something that we can reference from that situation. I liked what's going on at AGS already with the requests, but sometimes, yeah, those requests, actually I have no requests. At the same time, actually I want to help, I don't know how to help that one, because somehow that common language, I don't know, it's, we're still a relatively young organization, so we're building up the culture, we're building up the common language. We just have to keep at it with intention lah.
Thank you. That's very good feedback. It's something to think about moving forward. How do we improve the reciprocity ring? How do we improve going further and going beyond just simply offers and requests, by building something bigger, something that we need to think about. We need to hear from more members and understand better what is it members require. Thank you. Well, I just have 1 more minute in the segment, but I will just overrun it. And I want to ask you, what is playback theater? I see this all over your bio, and some websites I checked out. It's like, what is playback theater?
Well, it is a huge passion in my life. It is an applied theater as well as an applied drama, because it takes place in a theater as well as in any other space. And it is a really powerful form that has actually very ancient origins. It's based on the idea that a group of people coming together, sharing personal stories, will build group wisdom. So in a performance, we would have performers on stage, we would have the audience, and there will be a facilitator who's called the conductor, and we will invite stories, maybe about a specific topic, maybe not. It begins with, how are you today? What are we coming with? And something magical happens. If we follow narrative therapy or narrative practices, the stories that come, that follow one another, are all linked in a very concrete and coherent way. In some ways, we're having a dialogue through the exchange of stories. In some ways, as the stories are exchanged, we start to see different things that are actually questions in our own stories. So as somebody from the audience shares, the performers will play it back, therefore the name playback. And they can play it back in many wonderful artistic and dramatic ways. Right now, there are thousands of ways, well, hundreds of ways that are that are used to play back a story. But it began with just a few classical forms. So in a playback event, that's just what happens. We facilitate somebody to share a story, a personal story, something that happened to this person, and then we would play it back. Through the playback, there is often a therapeutic effect, even though it's not therapy. Just seeing your story played out, it can be very powerful. Just having the opportunity to tell your story, that's also being a rather powerful experience. But the emphasis for me is on the group process. What are all of these stories saying to us? So one person saying a story, it's kind of like revealing my personal identity as an individual. But if we collect the stories in an event, these are the stories that paint the identity of this group. And it says something, it asks something, it provides some answers and even some possible questions for the future. So again, I have never found a good way to explain this. You just have to experience it, unfortunately. But it will be a worthy experience.
So as the story is being played back, it's being performed by the performers. There's no rehearsal, no preparation, just about that. Wow.
No, we just have to, and the practice of it involves really deep sensing, active listening, of course, and empathy as well. And playback has been used all over the world in even just entertainment settings, but even in psychosocial aid, even in very traumatic situations, in therapy work. For example, after the Hurricane Katrina, the Center for Playback in the US initiated a project a few months after the Hurricane Katrina. A group was set up to go in to serve. So just the opportunity of allowing people to share their stories, to be in a space of togetherness, to be heard. Because at that time, after a few months, can you imagine being there homeless? You're not just homeless, your home is gone, your belongings are gone, your whole life has changed, and we feel who is here to listen to us. Even the act of being listened to can be very empowering. And finding ways forward in the group wisdom that's being built can give possibilities for even just tomorrow. So it's been used in many different contexts: social change, therapeutic work, therapy work, and even psychosocial aid.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so now we go into the next segment, which is basically we're opening to the floor. Anybody who has any questions, they can ask. Who's around? Let's see. Okay, so we've got Han, Ken Bing, Lilia, Vincent, Melody around. Any of you would like to ask any questions? Han.
Hello. Yeah, thanks, Michael, for sharing. And really, this is something super new to me, sharing about it for the first time. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very well, Han.
And just wondering, how can we catch a show?
Well, there are many different ways. Right now, the most immediate is to catch a show at the festival. I think we have one show today, one online show today, and another online show. Is tomorrow Thursday? Tomorrow. And then I think there's one more after that. But Singapore also has a few playback groups that sometimes does online events, online shows. Of course, now everybody's looking forward to be in person now. But there are always online events. If you are using Facebook, you could look for Singapore Playback Theatre Community, and look out for the events that are coming up. But I could put into the chat a link to some of the online shows that are coming up for the festival, and that's really interesting as well, because then you get a different flavor, international flavor, because everybody does it a little bit differently. Of course, the interesting thing is we all have the same base, like we know what are the basic formats and structure, but everybody brings their own cultural interpretation to it, group culture as well. So it will be interesting to watch the different dramatic elements that they bring. So I'll put it in the chat. Thanks for that question, Han. And of course, you can always keep in touch with me, and on my social media, there are always these things that I'm blasting.
Follow as friend.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, on the train station. See you.
Okay, thank you, Han.
Thank you.
Anyone else wants to ask a question?
I have a question for Michael. Okay, I missed the earlier part of stuff, so I'm not sure whether I get something there. But a question for Michael would be, I mean, pretty much all the, every single show is very unique depending on the audience and what they share. I think that's quite normal if you really recognize how powerful it is for the voices to be heard. But this question is there any unique experience that you have in particular playback show that that you think you would like to share with everyone, very unique and it really hits you a lot?
This is asking me to think about like the last 15 years. Last more than 15 years. Oh gosh. Actually, I think, what comes to mind actually, it's there have been many instances, but one of the more recent ones, as we are transiting from the online to the in-person space, I was giving a playback workshop, so for people to experience what it is. And it's not about a story. Well, yeah, it is kind of like about a story. I realized there were two things. Firstly, I realized that as I transit from, in the last 2 years of, doing stuff online and now slowly moving into in-person, my sensing has changed. Like there are things that I used to take for granted. I could sense, emotion. I could sense tension in the room. These things seems to have changed. Of course, also with the mask, it's very difficult to tell, right? Like when we are sitting together with somebody in a show, you can see the physical interaction between two people. Now we're all sitting, separately, right? So my radar has kind of changed. And what happened was somebody was telling a story about a partner. And I really think this would not have happened I really think I would have been more aware 2 years ago. I would be more, keen to what's happening. But this time I didn't realize that the partner was also in the group. So this led to, people having, responses that, people are crying, people are, it's not just because they're touched, for the story, that person was in the story. So I think, well, if I could sum it up in a few things, number one, in these few years, I think my radar has changed, and I have to kind of tweak it back in some ways. Don't know how, maybe do more, I don't know. But maybe intention is good enough, or awareness is good enough. Number two, I think when people tell stories, it can be so powerful, especially if they're stories about people who are already in the group. And number three, I think we sometimes we do activities and we're focused on the activities, but the level below the activities is how to facilitate that. What's happening? What are we observing? What are our options when something happens that wasn't in the plan? What are our options when people are being people are being humans, and they are stimulated, they're triggered, so on and so forth. So it's not exactly a playback story, but it's from a playback workshop, and there was a story involved. I think that is that's what I'm thinking about, rather than a really awesome story. And if I can add on, I think there was one story that has always remained in my mind. Nothing bad happened. Nothing. It was just so beautiful and wonderful. With the story itself was this teller came up to share a story, and the teller was saying, I'm gay, and my mother was on her deathbed, and before she died, I wanted to tell her. So on her deathbed, the teller told the mother, "Hey, I'm gay." After that, the mother recovered. So that after that, it had a really nice ending. Even the act of telling is so restorative. That the story ended with the mother and the teller and the partner, going for meals and just being together. So I think those kinds of stories are what keeps us going too. Like, it's not really always the wonderful big change that we're looking for. It's just little people, person, human changes that gives us hope. Sorry for the long answer. I tend to ramble.
It's fine. It's fine. It's just the opportunity to ramble.
Thanks for the question, Kim Beng.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, for me, I think the express playback is always, every single time it's always very, I can't say it's, I can't describe it, but for me it's always speechless. I think I cannot sum it up in any way that really gives justice to the story and the person who really is brave enough to tell it.
Yep. I mean, for us, it's always scary because, it's improvisational. We never really know what we're going to get, and we can just prepare as best as we can. But the element of uncertainty is so high. And we just try to serve as best as we can. I think that's also the ethos for all of our work. We just try as best as we can. We can't really guarantee outcomes, even though we know if we follow what we have practiced, the outcome should be there, but we really never know. I think this is also what is scary about applied drama and theater for many people in Singapore. So if you wanted to sell a program, for example, to the school, what are the concrete outcomes? For me, it's like, okay, yeah, they actually even increase empathy. How to measure, but really concrete outcomes are really difficult to write. And if you're going to tell the school, organization, company that, we're going to give the employees space, they're going to be able to say what they want, we're going to have a conversation. Sometimes that's scary for the person that's hiring you, right? So there is also the ethics of that situation, that if you're a company and you're paying me to go have a conversation about the employees, about you, the boss, so it gets kind of awkward in that sense. But to be honest, it really is not just Singapore. In many places around the world, open conversations and narratives which cannot really be controlled are scary for many people in power. And sometimes that sets the agenda back.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kim Beng. Anyone else wants to ask a question?
Hi, I have a question. This is more like a general thing. Hi, Michael, by the way. I want to ask how you found playback theater, or why you chose to be a playback theater practitioner specifically, as opposed to a forum theater, and I guess your journey and discovering how powerful theater can be in a social setting.
Sure. So this is the brief notes of the journey. Well, my first performance was when I was in kindergarten. So I think it was clear from very young that I had performing called to me. It was also a very prophetic performance because I was acting as a drunken person. I don't know why, kindergarten graduation, well. So anyways, and of course, when I went to uni, I studied theater studies. I also took psychology. So that was my degree. And after that, there was always something missing though. Like, there are people who just, the stage calls to us. We want to perform, we want to do like good work, artistic exploration. But at the same time, something still felt like it was missing. until I experienced playback theater, and then the human-to-human connection hit. And that was like, okay, so actually this is what I'm looking for, the human-to-human connection. The fact that I can tell my story, I can hear another story. So I'm still, the theater is still wonderful for me. But my work, the part that calls to me involves working directly with people, right? So then I studied some more into playback theater. I took workshops, and of course I was privileged enough to be able to travel to study it, and then I finished with a diploma in it. I became accredited, so on and so forth. The journey just took off. And the incredible part of that journey is it allows you to meet so many friends. Many of these workshops are international. You are coming together with different cultures. And even with the festival, there was a workshop, I think 3 years ago, by the Playback School in Japan, and I attended as well. And we have always stayed in touch, right? And we put on a performance. We just said, let's do it. So these kind of connections, because we've heard each other's stories, we've played back each other's stories. There's a bond, yeah. So I think that's how I came to playback. Why not forum? There isn't a why not forum. I've learned a little bit of forum as well. I've been a joker, which is the which is the facilitator for forum theater performances. Yeah, that there isn't really a why not, but I think it's just, I just got right into playback, and there's so much of that work that involves me. If you ask me to put on to do a forum theater event, sure, that's possible too. I can pull all the strings, make it happen, and even joker it. But yeah, I think for applied theater and applied drama, it consists of this whole bag of tools, and everybody has a different bag. What components are you stronger at? What components are you connecting more with? That forms your bag of tools. So similarly for me. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Milia. We've got time for one more question. 3 minutes. Anyone wants to ask a question?
I have a question, another question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, something about listening. It's about listening. How have your years as an applied, a theater practitioner, I mean, how does it shape you as a person who's able to listen? Listen not as in really the year form, as in the Chinese words, the different parts about listening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still a work in progress. I think the biggest part of listening for me is that there is always something behind the words. There's always something behind how the person is saying it. There's this part about being human and being reactive. And I am often reactive, but that's also the part where I'm trying not to be, just to be considering more of the person who's saying it. Which is at least for me, it's not always so easy. And playback theater has developed that part of thinking, that behind every story, behind however this person says it, behind whatever he or she is responding with, there is something behind it, and that gives me a lot of motivation to pause and give space for that. And it helps me to, and because of that, we create many authentic relationships, and that gives me further motivation to listen actively. But I have to say, it's not easy. It's also not that your eyes, ears, bodies, everything is open all the time. That we have so much more triggers and stimulus that we, I react sometimes, and then I wish okay, I wish I had been more considerate. But definitely there has been progress. I think I'm still a work in progress, but I would say it is a part of being human that I think we can have more of. And I think we had more because we didn't have so much stimulus in the past, right? But just having an occasion to sit down and listen to a personal story, not just, oh, yesterday I went to this and tomorrow I went to that, but a personal story. That was what happened when we gathered around fires, I think, in the past. Thanks for that question.
Thanks, Michael, for sharing. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, it's now 1:40, so we are going to end this Q&A session.
Thank you.